At the celebration banquet my girlfriend went to with her first love, things got heated and someone in the crowd shouted for them to kiss. In the video my friend forwarded to me, the one that had already gone viral locally, they were standing there, a perfect-looking couple, kissing passionately while everyone cheered. Watching it, I felt oddly calm. I even found it a bit funny. I left a comment under the video. After sneaking around for so many years, they finally dare to kiss openly. Congrats. Last week had been my dad's first birthday after being discharged from the hospital. I'd specifically asked Freya to come over for dinner. We waited so long that the food went cold, but she never showed up. It wasn't until I checked Matthew's WeChat moments that I realized the reason. Freya had rushed over to the hospital to take care of him over a mere sneeze. When I confronted her, she acted like it was no big deal. Your dad's fine now, and I'm not even part of your family. I'd just be in the way, she said flatly. We didn't talk for a few days after that. Yesterday, Freya sent me a message asking me to join her company's celebration banquet today. It was her subtle way of waving a white flag, reaching out first without actually apologizing. We've gone through this cycle over and over, argue, make up, argue again, and every time, it's because of Matthew. The power in our relationship has always been in Freya's hands. Whether we were doing well or falling apart depended entirely on her mood. And her mood depended entirely on him. Somewhere along the way, I'd become nothing more than a pawn in their emotional game. But when I saw her message yesterday, I didn't feel happy like before. I just felt exhausted. I knew something had changed, and deep down I thought maybe it was a good thing. Maybe I could finally take my heart back. Letting someone hold your heart when they don't value it is unbelievably tiring. I replied to her with a calm, "Got it," and went back to work. I'd been disappointed too many times to feel anything else. After work today, I cleaned myself up, but after a moment's thought, I decided not to bother changing into a suit. When I got to the hotel where the banquet was being held, I was right on time. But without an invitation, I couldn't get in. I tried calling Freya. No answer. I sent her messages. No reply. So I just stood there at the entrance, watching elegantly dressed guests coming and going, feeling like a complete fool left out in the cold. After my 10th unanswered call, I turned around and left. The banquet was so crowded that getting a cab was impossible, so I decided to walk home. I hummed a little tune as I walked, taking in the night scenery. It was surprisingly peaceful. When I got home, I saw the video my friend had sent me. On the screen, a stunning couple, Freya and Matthew, kissed passionately under the cheers of the crowd. The caption read, "The main stars of the banquet, Freya and her date." The video was already trending locally, and the comments were full of people calling them a perfect match, a couple made in heaven. When I watched it, my heart felt strangely calm. There was even a sort of relief that they were openly together. If I hadn't already sorted out my feelings, that video might have shaken me again. I typed a comment under the video. Freya and her little lover can finally be open about it now. Respect, and congrats. Then my words quickly got buried by the flood of other comments. After taking a shower, I went straight to bed. I didn't bother checking more of the online gossip. I didn't ask Freya why she never gave me an invitation. None of it mattered anymore. In the middle of the night, half asleep, I heard Freya stumbling back home, clearly drunk. Her footsteps were heavy, and for the first time, I didn't get up to help her. I didn't go to the kitchen to make her a bowl of hangover soup. The smell of alcohol on her breath when she got closer made me frown. Once I took off the rose-colored glasses I'd been using all these years, I realized something. Freya could actually be pretty irritating. She stayed still for a long time, then nudged me. "Kevin, I want some hangover soup," she mumbled, sounding whiny. I kept my eyes closed and stayed motionless, pretending to be asleep. No bowl of hangover soup in this world was worth me dragging myself out of bed in the middle of the night anymore. I used to wait at home like a housewife, just so when she came back late, she'd see that someone was waiting for her. But in return, all I ever got was her indifference and disdain. Most of the time, that bowl of carefully made soup would end up splattered on the floor after our arguments, staining the carpet I'd picked out. She'd stand there looking down at me, cool and aloof, while I fell apart emotionally. Then she'd stab me in the heart with one line or another. "If I really had something going on with Matthew, why would I still be with you?" Eventually, She stopped even bothering to explain. She would just watch me like I'd gone insane, letting me collapse and then drag myself back together. Once I steadied myself, she would tear me apart again. I got used to it. Looking back, a grown man behaving like I did, it was pathetic. Just thinking about it now makes me feel embarrassed. When she realized I wasn't reacting, she pushed me a few more times. I stayed limp, still pretending to sleep. Finally, she gave up. She stomped around the apartment as she took off her makeup and showered, making more noise than usual. The next time I woke up, it was already 10 in the morning. Freya was still asleep beside me, face buried in the covers. Strange. No outing with Matthew today? After a simple brunch, I sat on the couch and rewatched that video from last night. I watched their kiss, their dancing, their too-perfect chemistry on loop, at least 10 times. I even noticed the details of Matthew's Rolex watch. The latest model. A gift from Freya. She bought it just because she felt like it. So different from how she'd acted when I asked her to buy a decent gift for my dad when he was in the hospital. Then, she was stingy and reluctant. At 1 p.m., Freya finally woke up. She stared at the empty dining table, confused that I hadn't cooked for her like I always did. "Why didn't you come yesterday?" she asked as she scrolled through her phone while standing beside me. "You didn't give me an invitation. They don't know me. How was I supposed to get in?" I said lightly, half joking. Freya had climbed her way up to vice president at her company, yet none of her colleagues even knew she had a boyfriend. Some thought she was a wealthy single woman. I used to be upset about that, but whenever I brought it up, she'd scold me impatiently. "I go to work to make money, not to show off my relationship. Can you stop interfering with my job?" It wasn't until yesterday that I finally understood. It wasn't that she didn't want to introduce a boyfriend. It was that the title boyfriend belonged to Matthew in her heart, not me. "Why didn't you call?" she asked. I smiled and gestured toward her phone. It was probably full of my missed calls by now. "Well, since you didn't show up, I ran into Matthew and just had him stand in for you," she said casually. I nodded without responding. I knew exactly what kind of person Matthew was. He did everything on purpose. "Great," I said. "He's much better looking than me anyway. He's a perfect fit to be your date." I wasn't even being sarcastic. It was just the truth. Freya stared at me, eyes wide, like she didn't recognize me. "Are you mad? I told you there's nothing going on between us," she started. "If you two could really be together, you would have already. I'd have been out of the picture a long time ago." I cut her off, shrugging. "I'm going to work overtime today. I won't be home for dinner." When I got back from working overtime, the house was already empty. As expected, Freya had launched into another round of silent treatment. Honestly, this Cold War thing is pointless. I used to rack my brains to come up with all kinds of little surprises to make her happy and break the ice, burning out my last surviving brain cells in the process. Now, though, I feel a kind of freedom I haven't felt in years. I don't have to stay up late waiting for her to come home. I don't have to worry if she's out drinking again. In the mornings, I don't have to leave half an hour early to take a detour on 3 streets just so I can drop her off at work. I don't have to constantly check my phone at work, waiting for a message from her, or worrying whether she's with Matthew. None of that is my problem anymore. Now that I'm focusing on myself again, I suddenly have time to do my own things. I can play games freely with my buddies or grab late-night barbecue with colleagues. Even working overtime feels more meaningful now. Watching coworkers who joined after me become team leaders made me feel ashamed of how much I'd slacked. I'd been coasting ever since Freya told me, "As long as one of us earns money, that's enough." I dropped my career without hesitation, rushing home every day just so she'd have a hot meal waiting. Even though she rarely ate at home because she was always out socializing, I kept it up for years. I really was blinded by love. Now that I've finally crawled out of that mess, I can see how wrong I was. Maybe in love, there's no such thing as first come, first served. But the one who isn't loved definitely loses. Freya never visited my dad while he was sick, but she made ginger soup for Matthew over a sneeze. I threw away my career for her, and I've got nothing to show for it. Even the relationship I used to be proud of has become a joke. I should probably thank whoever filmed that video. If not for that, I might never have seen things clearly enough to make up my mind. Who knows how long I would have kept drowning in that emotional whirlpool. The ambition and energy of younger colleagues must have rubbed off on me. It's time to take the second big step in my life. The first was throwing away my dignity for Freya. The second will be taking it back piece by piece. I started working seriously again, even volunteering for overtime. I prepared for all kinds of assessments and exams, pushing myself harder every day. In an era where so many people just muddle through, I quickly stood out. My coworkers joked that I'd turned into a workaholic. For some reason, their teasing felt much lighter and happier than any of the arguments I'd had with Freya. These past few days, Freya kept up her Cold War routine and hardly came home. That was fine by me. If she'd been around, I wouldn't have known how to explain this sudden, workaholic version of myself. In her world, she always had to be the center of everything. If our Cold War ended, she'd expect me to go back to being her servant, catering to the spoiled princess. Honestly, I prayed our Cold War would drag on. At least for now, I was finally tasting a freedom I hadn't felt in ages. During a break in a meeting, I went out for a cigarette with a colleague. That's when Freya sent me a message, then quickly unsent it. I knew this trick of hers all too well. She'd accidentally send something and then withdraw it, just to catch my attention. It used to work back when things between us were still playful. I'd overthink it, wonder if she was flirting or trying to provoke jealousy. No. I figured she really did send it by accident. I deleted our entire chat, wiping away years of memories along with it. After work, Freya called me. "I'll pick you up after work," she said, like she was giving an order, not asking. No room for refusal. She must have checked the car restriction schedule and knew I hadn't driven today. My first instinct was to push back. No need. I'll just take the subway. It's more eco-friendly, I said. She let out a sarcastic laugh. Then she said she'd wait for me downstairs and hung up. With no choice, I grabbed my bag and went down. An hour passed. No sign of Freya. Then my phone rang again. "You're still not downstairs?" she asked. I told her I'd been waiting at the entrance for the past hour. She said she'd also been waiting around for a while. The longer her silence stretched, the more I could feel her irritation through the phone. "Aren't you at Panda Tower?" she finally asked. I couldn't help the smirk that tugged at my lips. "Panda Tower is Matthew's company, not mine," I replied. I knew I shouldn't have expected anything else from her. She'd mixed up my company and Matthew's. That pretty much said everything about my place in her heart. "I'll just take the subway. Don't bother coming." Before she could answer, I hung up. It was the first time I'd ever hung up on her, and it felt great. By the time I got home, Freya was already sitting on the couch, waiting. A rare sight, considering she always had some excuse not to come home: dinner with coworkers, camping trip with friends, and somehow Matthew's shadow was always somewhere nearby. "Kevin, you're back. I didn't mean it today. I was trying to surprise you, but I messed it up," she said. "I know you didn't mean it," I replied. That was exactly the problem. She never meant anything she did to hurt me. That's how little she cared. "Are you mad?" She searched my face. I shook my head and went to the fridge. I took out just enough ingredients to cook for myself. It had been a while since I cooked, and my skills were rusty. When she saw that I was only preparing food for one, she became even more sure I was angry. "You're not even cooking for me anymore. If you're not mad, then what? Why are you always like this?" I already said I'm sorry. What more do you want? This was so like her. She was good at reading the room, but never once did she truly reflect on her own behavior. Of course, I wasn't blameless either. In the past, I would have exploded by now, dragged up every unresolved issue and demanded answers. And whenever I did, she'd stab right where it hurt the most. "If Matthew and I could be together, we would have already, and you wouldn't matter." I hated that line more than anything, and yet I still stayed. "There's nothing else in the fridge. Just bear with it," I said. The truth was, I just didn't want to cook for her anymore. I'd prepared dinner for her countless times and waited at home, reheating the dishes over and over, but she never showed. Whenever I complained that she was wasting food, she would dismiss me. How much can a few dishes cost? Can you stop making a fuss over nothing? Just like that, the food and my effort were meaningless to her. I thought maybe Freya would get the hint and back off, or at least give me another long Cold War. I would have welcomed it. But to my surprise, the next day at noon she messaged me again. "I'll meet you at your office. I've got a meeting nearby and can give you a ride," she wrote. Really? I glanced at my car sitting in its spot. Did she have any idea how expensive overnight parking was here? I was going to turn her down, but then I paused. Maybe this was a good chance to put everything on the table and end things once and for all. Clean break. She could be with Matthew without any delay. After work, I went downstairs with my bag. This time she didn't go to the wrong place. She just brought an unwanted extra, Matthew. It had been a while since we'd seen each other in such a formal setting. Usually, I only saw him when he dropped Freya off at home. He sat comfortably in the passenger seat, and Freya honked once from the driver's seat as if to ask why I wasn't getting in. I laughed to myself and opened the back door. If someone else was driving, why not ride in comfort? Besides, I'd heard the passenger seat had the highest fatality rate in car accidents. No thanks. As my thoughts drifted, I remembered the first time I ever met Matthew. Our mutual friends had organized a welcome party for him at the same place where my team was having a company event. I'd had a few drinks and wanted to go home with Freya afterward. But then I saw them, Freya and Matthew, sharing a drink from the same glass because everyone was teasing them. Someone even joked, "When are you going to break up with that guy? Matthew is right here." Matthew had that calm, charming air about him. He just smiled at Freya. Freya didn't say anything. She just shook her head. That was when I realized he was the long-lost first love she had buried deep in her heart. And from that moment on, I couldn't help but constantly compare myself to him. Now, though, I'd long since given up on that pointless comparison. What's the point of stacking yourself against someone else when the outcome is already decided in her heart? "Freya, there's an art exhibition this weekend. Come with me." Matthew broke the silence. For some reason, Freya didn't immediately agree. She glanced at me through the rearview mirror, watching my reaction. Kevin wouldn't be that petty, right? He's not the type to keep you locked at home all weekend like some housewife, Matthew said with a mocking undertone. He'd never thought much of me. I shrugged. Do whatever you want. I've got overtime this weekend anyway. Go have fun. Just try not to go viral with another video. It's not a great look, I said lightly. Freya looked confused. Video? What video? She asked. Her confusion seemed genuine, but I didn't feel like explaining. What good would it do besides stirring up more trouble for myself? Matthew quickly changed the subject back to the art exhibition, and I knew this had all been planned ahead of time. But as long as Freya didn't officially break up with me, he had no choice but to remain on the sidelines. I had originally planned to clear things up with Freya today. But now, I decided to let Matthew sit in that uncomfortable, third-wheel position a little longer. I stopped talking and started saving all the trending videos from yesterday instead. They were solid evidence. Evidence of Freya's betrayal. As I did that, the thought of my mounting parking fees really stung. Listening to their chatter in the front, I gradually drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, we were already home. I stretched and followed Freya upstairs. The silence between us didn't bother me at all. If anything, it felt strangely comforting. "You're working overtime this weekend?" she suddenly asked. "Yeah," I replied casually. Going to the office to read counted as overtime, didn't it? Today I went with Matthew to pick up a few things. "I specifically came to get you after work," she explained quickly. As if that would change anything. Matthew's family wasn't short on money. What could he possibly need Freya's help to buy? More likely she was just following him around like a dedicated little errand runner. The thought made me laugh bitterly. Hadn't I also been Freya's lapdog all these years? Only now had I finally wised up. I muttered a few vague responses and went to shower and sleep. Later that night, Freya pressed her body against mine, trying to ignite something, but I didn't move. My heart was as calm as a still lake. The next day, I was surprised to see her downstairs again. Lucas and the others want to meet up today. They insisted I bring you along, she said. I glanced at her, then at my car. Parking fees flashed in my mind again. I held it in for a while, but finally said, I'll drive. You lead the way. Just make sure to follow me, okay? She said, worried I'd find an excuse to bail. Why would I? Lucas was the one who'd sent me that video. He was also the one who'd encouraged Freya to break up with me. They'd all grown up together, her little childhood group. Everyone thought Freya and Matthew were meant to be. Some twist of fate had led Freya to date me instead after Matthew went overseas. We'd been together for years. But ever since Matthew came back, their friend group started meeting regularly again, just like the old days. Lucas had told me countless times how perfect Freya and Matthew had once been, how their families supported them, how they were a match made in heaven. Every time I heard it, I'd lose my mind and rush back to question Freya. And every time, she replied with the same line. If we could be together, we would have already. What's it got to do with you? It was a vicious cycle, ripping open wounds that had barely begun to heal and letting them fester. Fortunately, I'm stubborn. Like a cockroach. Hard to kill. I cut away the rotting pieces in my heart, and the wounds that wouldn't heal, I stitched up myself. I'm moving on now. I accepted Freya's invitation. I was curious what kind of drama this little gathering would turn into. We arrived at Lucas's place. Before I could knock, the door swung open, and confetti burst out at us. Matthew stepped forward, roses in hand, and offered them to Freya. Freya, today marks the 15th year since we met, he said. Back then, when you confessed to me, I didn't give you an answer because I wanted to build a better life first, one where you'd never have to worry or work so hard. Now, I finally have the ability to make you happy. I think it's time I gave you my answer. I want to be with you. Their friends erupted in cheers and encouragement, no one holding back. Lucas called out, Matthew gave up a high-paying overseas job and came back for you. Freya, it's time to set things right. We're all waiting for the wedding, someone else shouted. The atmosphere was so overwhelmingly supportive that even I, the supposedly official boyfriend, found myself clapping. Clap, clap, clap. It was only then that people seemed to notice I was actually there. The room suddenly fell into an awkward silence. Except for Lucas, who was already drunk. Kevin, you've got some nerve showing up here. If you're a real man, you'll step aside and give Freya back to Matthew. Haven't you figured it out yet after all these years? Sure, I replied calmly, almost cheerfully. Matthew, congratulations on finally getting what you've always wanted. The third wheel is finally getting promoted to the main act. Freya stared at me in shock, like she didn't know who I was. I shrugged. Did I say something wrong? Kevin, don't talk about Freya like that, Matthew snapped. Freya still hadn't said anything. A flicker of displeasure flashed across his face, so he turned his frustration toward me. I just wanted to give everyone closure for the past. You don't have to be so harsh. Closure? I didn't know since when closure meant staging a public confession in front of someone's boyfriend. Maybe this is just how rich people like to play. The people around us started choosing sides, criticizing me as if I were the one who'd crashed a stranger's engagement. Enough. Freya tossed the bouquet into Lucas's arms and, expressionless, walked over to stand beside me. Kevin is my boyfriend. I'm the one who invited him here. If you've got a problem, take it up with me. Wow. She suddenly remembered to stand up for me. She must be in some kind of crisis. In the past, whenever her friends mocked me, she just stood aside like a Victoria statue, watching me take the hits. If I asked about it later, she'd say, "They're just my friends." You're a man. It's just words. Why are you taking it so seriously? Now that I'd finally let go of hope, she decided to defend me. Too late. People often test their position in someone's heart by pushing boundaries and watching how emotional the other person gets. The bigger the reaction, the more important they think they are. Over time, I realized Freya wasn't emotionally numb. She just reserved all her intense emotions for Matthew. Freya, don't get me wrong, Matthew said smoothly. I just wanted to make up for what I couldn't do before. If you're upset, I'll apologize to Kevin on behalf of everyone. I'm sure Kevin doesn't hold a grudge, right? Very smart. He shifted all the blame onto himself to smooth things over. Freya hesitated, eyes flickering between me and the people around us. I don't hold grudges, I said calmly. I didn't even say anything when your kissing video went viral. It's just a confession. Why would I be that petty? Don't worry. Video? What video? Freya asked, stunned. But the mention of the kiss clearly triggered something in her memory. I pulled out my phone and opened the trending video. Honestly, if Lucas hadn't sent it to me, I probably still wouldn't have known about it. I showed the video of her and Matthew kissing to everyone. As it played, Freya's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Love doesn't just vanish in an instant. Even now, I had no intention of humiliating her in front of everyone. So I chose to turn around and walk away. Sitting alone in my car, memories of me and Freya kept playing in my head. It felt like all of it dissolved with what happened today. My phone kept ringing. I muted it and drove back, to my real home. My dad had been out of the hospital for some time now, and I still hadn't spent much time with him. As for Freya and me, we'd talk once things calmed down. By the time I saw her again, she might already be Matthew's girlfriend. The next morning, as soon as I stepped out of the house, I saw Freya waiting downstairs. The morning sun cast a soft light on her face, and her tiredness looked oddly fitting in the scene. "Kevin, you're finally out," she said, hurrying to match my pace. "You haven't been answering my calls, and you weren't home. I didn't know how else to find you. I don't even have your parents' phone numbers. I've been waiting for you." That's right. We'd been together for 5 years, and she still didn't have my parents' contact info. She didn't even want to visit my dad when he was in the hospital, but she remembered to send gifts to Matthew's parents every holiday. I had originally planned to introduce her to my parents properly, but now it seemed pointless. Seeing I was quiet, she anxiously continued. "I really don't know how that video got out. I already contacted the uploader and got it taken down. We were just playing a game that night, and I didn't want Matthew to be embarrassed in front of everyone. It was my fault. I swear it won't happen again, Kevin. It won't happen again." I'd heard that so many times. She said it after drinking too much with Matthew. After staying the night somewhere I couldn't reach her. After sleeping over at Matthew's place to take care of him. Every time, she would snap, "I told you it won't happen again. What more do you want?" She was the one who kept promising and breaking those promises. "I'll stay at my place for now. Let's take some time apart and think," I said, ignoring her empty assurances. I got in the car and drove to work. During lunch, Freya messaged me again, then withdrew the message like before. But this time, she sent a picture right after. It was a travel plan. I sent her a question mark. Was she seriously showing me her trip arrangements with Matthew? "You said you've always wanted to visit the capital, right? I've made all the arrangements. Let's go together," she replied. We'd talked about traveling together countless times. I'd worried she was too busy, so I carefully planned everything in advance. All she had to do was show up. But every time, she said she didn't have time. Too busy having dinners with Matthew. Too busy stargazing with Matthew. Too busy attending events with Matthew. But never too busy to reject me. Unfortunately, I deleted our chat history already, or I could have scrolled back and watched myself being a fool in full detail. Most of my long messages over the years had probably only been met with a couple of short replies. Sometimes it felt like I was talking to myself. At first, I told myself she was just busy with work. Later, I got used to it, treating our chat like her daily reminder not to skip meals. In love, the one who loves more always loses. But I liked her. What else could I do but keep losing? Now I realize sometimes the best outcome for two people is to stop disturbing each other. I casually skimmed her travel itinerary and put it aside. She hadn't even remembered that I'm allergic to chicken. Yet in her plan, the very first must-try stop was roasted chicken in the capital. The weekend arrived. My coworkers had been pestering me for days to treat them to a meal to celebrate my promotion to team leader. I laughed and waved my hand. "Tonight, it's on me," I said. It's funny how not planning for a wedding suddenly makes your wallet feel lighter. I used to be extremely frugal, saving every penny so I could marry Freya. If my coworkers wanted to grab coffee together, they'd skip asking me because they knew I'd refuse. After a while, they stopped including me in any group activities. Meanwhile, Freya burned through money like water for Matthew. She bought him luxury watches and high-end items without blinking. She even dipped into our house savings without hesitation. When I told her we should be more careful, she snapped back. Most of that money was earned by me anyway. I can always earn it back later. Eventually, I stopped saying anything. Now, I'm genuinely glad I've carved out time for myself. With our arms flung over each other's shoulders, my colleagues and I headed to a barbecue place they called a hidden gem. Huge portions, great flavor, low prices. I raised my glass to toast everyone when my phone rang. Freya. Kevin, are you coming home tonight? I bought a bunch of your favorite dishes. It's been so long since we had dinner together, she said. I thought of her disastrous cooking, which usually ended with me taking over in the kitchen. No need. You eat. I'm already out eating, I said. Right then, a female coworker yelled for everyone to raise a toast. Freya's voice sharpened immediately. Who was that? Why are there women's voices? I sighed. I'm at a company dinner. Of course there are female colleagues. Don't be paranoid, I said. Every time I found out she'd been with Matthew, she'd say, we're just hanging out in a group. Obviously there are guys. Don't be paranoid. Now I finally had the chance to throw her own words back at her. After I hung up, I went back to my grilled skewers. They were really good. Throughout the evening, she sent a few more messages, saying she was worried about me driving after drinking and offering to come pick me up. I ignored her and planned a second round with my colleagues. When I didn't answer, she called again, over and over, until I finally picked up. What now, princess? I asked. I'm worried about you. Just give me a chance to apologize, okay? She said. She paused, then finally squeezed out the words. Hearing her apologize felt surreal. She always prided herself on being strong and independent, someone who bleeds sweat but never cries. She never admitted when she was wrong and never apologized. When I loved her, I admired that as strength. Now that I don't, it just seems unreasonable. I sent her my location but didn't say when we'd finish. By the time we staggered out of the restaurant, drunk and unsteady, she was already waiting outside. How did you drink this much? She complained as she tried to help me toward her car. I pushed her away and stumbled toward my own. Even in my drunken state, I didn't forget how expensive parking was there. Freya bit her lip but still followed me. I want to go home, I mumbled from the passenger seat, watching the streets pass by. When we arrived at her place, I refused to get out. I want to go to my own house, I insisted. That sneaky woman. She tried to trick me again. She had ulterior motives. Freya gently helped me up the stairs to my parents' place and put me to bed. Before leaving, she kissed me lightly on the forehead. I opened my eyes instantly. Touching the spot where her lips had landed, I felt nothing but a strange kind of calm. To avoid running into her, I got up at dawn the next day. I didn't expect to find her sleeping on the couch. I walked over quietly and draped a blanket over her. She stirred awake. Kevin, you're up. I'll make you some hangover soup, she muttered sleepily, her voice soft and lacking the usual commanding tone she had at work. No need. Just rest more, I said and rushed out. To my surprise, she didn't go to the art exhibition with Matthew. Instead, she brought me a lunchbox and left it at the office reception, afraid I wouldn't meet her in person. From then on, Freya started acting like a completely different person. She stopped hanging out with Lucas and the others. She even turned down invitations from Matthew. Every day, she delivered lunch to me and reminded me to eat well. If I went out with colleagues, she would show up afterward to pick me up. I didn't know what she was trying to do, but since I was busy with a new project, I chose not to think too much about it. At home, she rushed back every day to cook for me. Some of her friends sent her voice messages, teasing that she must be preparing to marry Matthew and become a housewife soon. I happened to be beside her the first time one of those messages played. The voice message blared out in the living room. Freya panicked and tried to turn it off, but somehow turned the volume up instead. I stayed expressionless, going over a work proposal beside her. Inside, I felt oddly calm. I wasn't about to open my heart again just because of a sudden change in her behavior. And I was right not to. I overheard her replying seriously, and she even posted a photo of us on her Moments. When she saw my frown, she quickly showed me the post, assuming I was unhappy about something. In truth, I was only frowning because of a small issue in the proposal. She showed me the photo she'd posted. It was from our 5-year anniversary, taken at a studio I'd insisted we go to for a commemorative photo shoot. She had been smiling non-stop that day. I'd thought it was because she liked the idea of my proposal. It wasn't until later that I realized she'd received a message from Matthew that day, telling her he was finally coming back. Thinking back now, that happiness had been real. But beautiful moments pass quickly. 5 years had vanished like smoke. The company just called me in for overtime. "You'll have to eat alone," I said. I had a proposal to fix, and it might become my stepping stone to a bigger promotion. Ignoring her hesitant expression and the bowl of soup she'd carefully made, I left. She didn't need me as a dinner companion anyway. To my surprise, when I finished overtime and stepped outside, I found Freya waiting for me again. I rubbed my eyes, half wondering if I was imagining her. I'd expected her to blow up after how I'd brushed her off, then drag me into another Cold War. Instead, she was quietly standing in the cold wind, cheeks flushed, just waiting for me to get off work. In that moment, I made a decision. Even though I didn't love her anymore, the Freya I remembered used to be a bright, confident girl. For my own sake, I didn't want to see her become so pitiful. And besides, I knew we couldn't go back. "There's something we should talk about," I said, walking toward her. Her expression shifted from surprise to fear. Without a word, she got in her car and drove off. I scratched my head, then turned and headed to my parents' house instead. We both knew there was a gap between us that couldn't be crossed anymore. Dragging things out wouldn't fix anything. I didn't expect Freya to be this stubborn. To avoid whatever I wanted to say, she started another Cold War, but this time, she was the one avoiding me. Neither of us backed down. Just when I was stuck in this stalemate, my dad called me into his room. "Life isn't all about love," he said. "Sometimes letting go now is the best way to meet again under better circumstances. Right now you two are too stubborn. You're just hurting each other." When my parents first heard I was dating Freya, they were genuinely happy for me. I'd mentioned her to them many times, and they liked her from how I described her. They'd even pushed us to get married sooner rather than later. But I kept stalling, saying it wasn't the right time. I took all the pressure on myself to avoid burdening Freya with it. I didn't want her to worry about practical things. Who would have thought I'd never get the chance? As soon as I stepped out of my dad's room, we heard a knock at the door. "Kevin." Freya stepped in energetically, carrying health supplements, and greeted my parents with a bright smile. "Uncle, Auntie, it's been so long. I've just been busy lately and haven't had time to visit. I heard Uncle's recovery is going well, so I came to check in on him." My parents looked surprised, then they glanced at me. After a brief chat, they made an excuse and left the room, giving us space. Once we were alone, I dropped the polite act. "Don't you think it's a bit inappropriate to just show up like this?" I asked. "Uncle was sick. I came to see how he's doing." "Is that wrong?" she asked. "My dad's already recovered. Now you remember to visit him? Where were you when I asked you to come before?" "I was busy back then. As soon as I had time." "Okay. Since you're here, let's talk properly," I cut in. We went to a nearby cafe. I stopped her when she tried to order anything. "Let's keep this short. I need to get back to work," I said. "Don't you think the way we've been interacting is off?" I asked. No man can put up with his girlfriend being that close to another guy, not to mention everything else that's happened. Ignoring her attempt to explain, I went on. "I really loved you before, but you shouldn't have taken that love for granted. I'm human too. I get tired." I sighed, wondering whether it was worth saying everything. She just sat there quietly, tears falling. "I know I've been selfish, Kevin. I admit that when Matthew first came back, I was confused. But over time, I realized you're the one I truly love. I told them all I'm your girlfriend now. I told Matthew we won't be hanging out anymore. Can you please give me another chance? I'll change until you love me again, okay? Freya, you still don't understand. The problem between us isn't just Matthew. It's that you crossed a line. Without even noticing, you gave him your heart. I never saw the kind of care and affection a girlfriend should have for her boyfriend. If I had a childhood friend and catered to her the way you did with Matthew, would you be okay with that? And what hurt me the most was when my dad got sick and wanted to see you, and you ran off to take care of Matthew instead. Did he really need you? Or were you just avoiding meeting my parents? We should have ended this a long time ago, I said. Then I got up and left the cafe. Through the car window, I could see Freya still sitting there. The sunlight lit up her tear-streaked face. Maybe this was the first time she'd ever cried for me. I have many memories of Freya crying. Like a little hamster, she'd bury herself in the blankets and stay completely still. If she stayed like that for 5 minutes, I knew she was crying. There were countless reasons: a failed exam, frustrations at work, missing home, or maybe feeling sad about that unfulfilled first love. She cried when she saw Matthew again too. Those were tears of joy, the kind that made everything in her world feel complete just because he was there. When I stood next to her back then, I would tell myself, as long as I'm here, I'll never let her shed a single tear because of me. In the end, I broke that promise. After that conversation, I deleted all my contacts with Lucas and the others. They were only ever friends because of Freya, and they'd never accepted me anyway. Finally, my life got back on track. My packed schedule didn't leave room for random, painful thoughts. Every day, I worked, studied, and chatted with my parents in the evenings. There was a quiet kind of peace in my life. Freya never reached out again. She stopped posting on her moments too. That was for the best. If I saw her again, it would only remind me of how pathetic I'd once been as her simp. Just when I thought life would keep going like this, I ran into her at the hospital. My dad and I were there for a follow-up. Outside the entrance, she was looking around as if waiting for someone. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen her, but her eyes lit up when she spotted us and she jogged over. "Kevin. Uncle. What a coincidence," she said, greeting us. She naturally took the medical file from my hands. "How was the checkup, Uncle? Everything going smoothly?" She slipped her arm through my dad's and guided him forward, throwing glances back at me. "Kevin, why are you just standing there? Catch up," she called. I didn't know what to say as I watched her lead my dad to the car. The whole way home, she had him laughing non-stop. I couldn't even find an opening to join the conversation. When we got home, my dad asked me to properly walk her out. Seeing the triumphant, satisfied smile on her face, I felt my patience thinning. "Freya, you don't have to do this," I said. "You don't need to waste your time taking care of my parents. There's no future for us. Why put yourself through this?" The Freya I knew was someone who always held her head high, refusing to bow to life no matter how tough things got. Even though we'd broken up, I didn't want to see her lose herself like this. It wasn't worth it.